Lofi Poli Sci coming at you. Michael Pickering here with our good friend Gregory Day, writer, director, bookseller, and the voice behind HipsvilleAD, the fanatical sect of god of subcultures and fervent ramblings of all breed of cinematic pleasures. How we doing out there today, Gregory?
Oh, I'm splendid. How are
Day?
you?
Oh, doing good, doing good. And what kind of top 10 movie list do you have for us?
Oh, I got a little different one here than we usually go for. Sometimes I'm here to talk about exploitation films or art house or regional films. And today I'm going to take a little swerve. We're going to talk about bad movies and bad movie culture.
Bad movies. I like this so much. I can't wait to dig into it. And just a little bit of heads up for everyone listening and queuing in for the first time, or you haven't been with us for a minute. Just so you know, every movie we go into, Gregory Day sends me the trailers for it, and I digest it. I look into it. I'm like, am I really gonna buy or sell this movie? I don't know. I don't know. So then we come together and we're like, how good is this good movie? But today it's how good is this bad movie? So I can't wait to see how many of these you can actually sell me on seeing, my friend. Why don't you go ahead and take us into well, before we jump into it, do you want to kind of intro into what do you mean by bad movies?
Yeah, so there's a whole culture of bad movies out there, and these are movies that some people call so bad they're good movies, movies that are just they have a level of incompetency to them or strangeness that the people who made them maybe necessarily don't know how to make movies, or they just they don't have the budget necessarily to make a movie or to do multiple takes. And we're going to talk about that. Like, if you shoot something and things go awry, do you have the money to do it again? And so you do the best you can. But a lot of these films that I'm going to talk about are films that are actually near and dear to me, because I think there are the people behind them have a lot of love and passion behind their films. They just don't have the talent or the money to do things. And some of these films are or I wouldn't say highly regarded, but they're very famous, and they mean something to some people because they're better than mediocre movies. And that's something we could talk about later. But what's more memorable, a disaster or something that you're going to forget in a week's time after you see the cinema? So all the films here are just outlandish, weird films that kind of, for many different reasons, just came out the way they did, and they're not on the level of prestigious art films or studio productions. So I'm interested to talk about them.
So am I. So am I. Well, with that, why don't you go ahead and lead us into your number 10?
Yeah, so number 10 is this film from 1994 called Tammy and the T-Rex. I want to talk about this film because A, it has a weird premise, but B, it's kind of been re-examined lately. I'm going to talk about that. Talk about why that is. But it's the story of this teenage couple, these high schoolers, and it's Paul Walker and Denise Richards who are the couple. And Paul Walker's character dies, and a mad scientist puts his brain in an animatronic T-Rex. And so it's this love story between Tammy and her boyfriend, who is now a T-Rex. And it's a bizarre love story, but it's highly entertaining because now that he's in this T-Rex, he can't really communicate verbally, but he goes on like a murderous rampage. He kills all of the bad guys and the bullies, and just it's hilarious. It's just a fantastic time. But the reason it was kind of dubbed a bad movie for so long is because the producers didn't really like it once it was finished, and they had all the gore cut out and some of the sex scenes cut out, and in doing that, kind of undermined the dark comedic tone of the film, and going along with those cuts kind of made the film incoherent. And so for a long time, people had seen this film as just this incoherent mess of a bad dinosaur movie. But recently it got a re-release where it was put together as it was intended to be watched, and it is an outlandish and crazy film. It's got a wild idea, but it is very funny and endearing. So yeah, I'm hoping that it will move away from being dubbed a bad movie and into maybe more cult status. But yeah, this is a great example of like how a film could be cut by the people who are producing it and released as an incoherent mess.
So real quick, I'm gonna tell you, go ahead and write down somewhere, send me how to watch this movie. You got me, you sold me. All right.
Okay.
Because this is just like, it's like Romeo and Juliet meets Jurassic Park. This, first off, this movie was so 1990s. Like, it came out in
Mhm.
94, and oh my goodness, it just, like, that pulls up my heartstrings. Being a child of the 90s like I
Mhm.
am, like, ah, yes. But like, a human being, their mind being transplanted into a T-Rex, and then a love story with Denise Richards and a T-Rex. And the
Mhm.
trailer, I loved it because it ends with her riding a T-Rex off into the sunset. I am
Yeah.
just like, I'm like, oh my goodness. I was like, he got me. I was like, I gotta
Yeah.
see this. I gotta see this. So definitely send me how I can watch this, because I
Yeah, absolutely.
imagine I wouldn't be surprised if this is hard to find.
Yeah, I actually think right now, I don't know if it'll be forever, but right now it's on Shutter in its entirety. In the cut you need to watch to enjoy it. So I think I can hook you up with that.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. All right, why don't you take us into number 9?
Yeah, number nine is kind of a film that's maybe earned a reputation of being bad over time, but maybe wasn't necessarily dubbed that when it came out. It's The House on Haunted Hill from 1959. A little, it's like your basic haunted house film, except for it's got um, Vincent Price paying a bunch of people to stay in a house if they could stay in overnight. And he's going to give them a bunch of money. But what's so great about the film is that it's a William Castle production, and he was one of these producers who would go town to town with this film, and he would do these gimmicks inside movie theaters where skeletons would pop up in the theaters, scare people, or he'd have like little buzzers under the seats to buzz people, kind of like this gimmick. And films aren't really made to last long. But this is a movie where you could obviously tell like there's plastic skeletons in them, or people who were ghosts who were on treadmills, things like that in the film. And it's a goofiness, but in 1959 when the film came out, it was sort of like I don't think it really scared anybody, but it was like a theme park. You're going to see a theme park ride because things are going to pop out at you in the theater and goose you in your seat and stuff like that. And so, watching it today, it's kind of earned this reputation of being this great cheesy film where you're really going to laugh at it because you can't believe how bad the effects are or how hammy Vincent Price's performance is in the film. And so, this is a kind of a cornerstone of a bygone period where we get to look back at him and laugh at what maybe people thought was you know highly entertaining cinema.
I'll tell you, at first, when I watched this trailer, I was just like, it made me think, because there's another movie called The House on a Haunted Hill, like a more recent one. And I was like, is this the original? But then, like, now listening to you talk about it, like, no, it kind of seems like two
Hmm.
different films just with the same name. And I have to tell you, like, the effects in here, I mean, of course, it was 1959, but I mean, it's like, it was so in your face obvious. And like, one that really got me was they had like 7 little coffins, and I'm like, oh
Yes.
no, no, are you really going there? Like, really, like little kid coffins. I was like, that's kind of creepy, man.
Well, it's in the film. It's like seven little
But
coffins, and
then,
he
like,
opens
you
the
talking to me
coffins.
about it,
Hmm.
and you making it sound more like a theme park.
Oh,
it,
yes,
it,
yes.
it sounds way more interesting as the theme park thing. And like,
Yeah.
if just watching the trailer, I don't know, I wouldn't have watched it.
Mhm.
But now, like, listening to you talk about it, also, I get the kind of vibe like Transylvania 65000,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
1980s Jeff Goldblum kind of like, is it serious? Is it funny? It's both, So yeah, man, I would check this one out. I like it. And from 1959, I dig it. I dig it.
Yeah, this is definitely a film you should watch. I would say every film on this list are films you should watch with a bunch of friends, maybe after a couple of brews. It's that kind of fun experience.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. All right, where you coming at us for number 8?
Yeah, number eight is a movie I actually really love. It's called Miami Connection from 1987. It's a strange plot, but I was try to make sense of it for you. It's like a synth rock band, synth rock, synth pop rock band. I don't know. It's very hard to describe, but it's a very much an '80s rock band slash orphans taekwondo class who all live together, who are fighting off ninjas in Orlando who are trying to stop. They're trying to stop the ninjas from importing cocaine from Miami. So um, this is a great like action movie where it's just like over the top, and it's got a lot of heart because it's all about these grown men who are all orphans who live together and are all from different backgrounds. And so it's got like a lot of support and like found family aspect to it. But it is a film that is made by someone who's never made a movie before, this guy named YK Kim. who was a South Korean immigrant to America, and he's a Taekwondo instructor. And he decides he's going to make a movie to make an anti-violent statement. However, he ends up making this incredibly violent movie where people are getting their arms ripped off and getting just these really bloody kung fu fights and shootouts. But when he set out to make this movie, he had hired a director to make this film, and then the director quit, and so he bought a book on how to make movies. And not only is he the star and the writer of the movie, he also becomes the director, and he makes this film that is just so it's just so wild because, but I mean, it's competently made where you could see the shots work. And the action works, but it's just the characters are also created by someone who maybe doesn't quite understand the American psyche, who is looking at a bunch of on-screen personas like your Stallones and your Chuck Norrises, and all these guys are these sort of macho heroes, even though they're these very heartfelt orphans. And so yeah, this is it's a laughable film because you're watching how extreme 80s cinema can be, but at the same time, it's a guy who really pulled off making a film, having not done it before. Kind of coming here and creating a life for himself as a Taekwondo teacher. So this film I like a lot. It's just everything you want in an 80s movie. And yeah, it's just a blast.
Yeah, I'd say if Tammy and the T-Rex was a 90s flick, this one, The Miami Connection, is an 80s flick. It's so 1980s. The hair, the music, the cars, the vibe, and then the ninjas. Like, ninjas were so 1980s. For people who aren't in the 80s or 90s, like, there were 4 movies called American Ninja. Okay, like
I love ninjas.
yeah, there was so much ninjas, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, ninjas were the hype. And some of this even kind of felt like video game-ish with the sound effects and what they were doing. And like, it also felt like this was, I don't know, like maybe a better version of Street Fighter than Van Damme's movie Street Fighter. Like I kind of felt like this was an early rendition of, a video game movie, but not a video game movie. I kind of felt like it was a cool, fun ride. I'd say you're 3 for 3 right now, buddy. I kind of want to check this one out. I do. And it's super interesting to hear, a first-time writer and, has to spur the moment, just be a director. And it's like, there are reasons why production companies hire people who are directors just to direct a film. Because like, it's very different things, like producing a film, writing a film, and then directing it. But to like suddenly have to do all of that all at once, I could only imagine how much of a headache that must have been.
Yeah, but he really pulls it off. I mean, being a director is a very difficult job. I mean, it's like keeping every aspect of the film in your mind as you're doing it for every department. And to not ever do that before and step on the set of this movie and take it over, that's something to be very proud of.
It is. It really is. And whether you know it or not, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to use this as a segue. I would love to see or know who directed this next flick, because this next one is so different than the 1980s Ninja Warrior Miami Connection. Where are you taking us for your number 7, buddy?
Yeah, the next film is a personal favorite of mine. I had to put it on the list because it's from another world. It's from 2013. It's called Ghost Shark, and this film is, I guess, let me backtrack because I want to talk about, in bad movie culture, there is a whole subsection of films.
Yeah, people, we have to keep reminding you, we are saying that these are bad movies.
Yes,
he just happens to love them.
Yes. So backtracking here real quick, there's a whole subsection of Jaws ripoffs that are categorized in the bad movie world. It starts off pretty much after Jaws, but even the Jaws sequels. But it's a tradition that's sort of continued for decades now, where people just continue to make shark films. And this one particular, I mean, there's so many shark films. If you have like a Tubi account, it's a free streaming service. There's like a million micro budget shark movies out there where maybe all they could afford is to animate the fin moving through the water. Or there's a movie like
Sharknado.
Sharknado is probably the most famous one.
And Sharknado 2 and Sharknado 3 and Sharknado 4.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's a fun enough movie called Land Shark, where the sharks could swim through land. Or Shark and Saw Women's Prison Massacre. But the best of these to me, like these modern, like really low budget movies, is shark movies is Ghost Shark, and the reason why is because they somehow got their hands on the model from the original shark from Jaws, so Bruce the shark model, um, and they I don't know how they did it, but they recorded it and got to use it animated as it moves around. But this particular film is about a shark that's a ghost, and it can travel anywhere there's water, and so it's terrorizing this community, jumping from place to place, where it allows some really great kills in this movie as it arrives at a little kid's swimming pool and eats the people in the pool. It attacks these bikini babes who are doing a car wash fundraiser, and it emerges from a man's stomach after he drinks water from the office water cooler. And so it's just all got these, yeah, it's just got all these like outlandish kills. The movie around all that is painful to watch. It's just a bunch of people who probably never acted before in a movie and just like getting their friends together to make a film. But the special effect, it seems like all the money went to the special effects budget and renting the shark, because it's a hell of a good time when you're just watching those moments. So, but yeah, I couldn't make a list like this without talking about the shark movie because it's I don't know, it's like a viable thing where you can go out and make a shark movie and probably make a couple of $100,000 back on it from streaming. But to me, this is a unique one and a fun one.
Well, I believe you 100% when you talk about like the shark subgenre of bad movies, because the fact that there are four Sharknadoes,
Hmm.
it means that the first three were profitable.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and for those who don't know what Sharknado is, it's a movie where tornadoes fling sharks at you. I mean, but this one it did look kind of fun. You got me. You're 4 for 4 with this one, but I just have to say, like, I was just like, how, why? I was like, even in 2013, I was just like, but I had not realized that it was such a thing, like a subculture within it of B films or genre flicks or however you want to call it. But this one did look interesting to me, and it looked like a more updated version of a lot of like older spoof genre flicks. And for previous conversations and lists that we've had, it seems like there's a lot more in the 1980s and 90s than there are, today. Now, granted, 2013, it's still like 10 years ago, but that's not
Hmm.
that old ago, or that's, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Ghost Shark, though. Ghost Shark, I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Hmm.
Where are you going for number 6 now?
All right, number six is I would say from here on out, many of these films are all kind of competing for the worst movie ever made.
Really?
But this one specifically has a huge cult following. It's Troll 2 from 1990.
So there's a Troll
Yes,
1.
there's a Troll 1. However, this movie has nothing to do with Troll 1.
So it's even a
There's
horrible
yes,
sequel.
yes, there's a Troll movie. It was actually produced by an actual studio. It came out. Sonny Bono was in it, and I think some other minor stars were in that film, but it was a moderate success, but it actually had a troll in it. This film, I believe, was actually titled something different, maybe even Goblin, I'm not sure. But this film just took the title, Troll 2, to try to capitalize on the success of the previous film. But it's a weird movie about this family that relocates to this town. This sort of middle American family relocates to this town called Neilbog, which is goblin spelled backwards. And as they're stuck in this town, these trolls are turning the family and their friends into this sort of green sludge so that they can eat them, because the trolls or the goblins are vegetarian, so they don't actually want to eat the humans as they are. They want to turn them into some kind of weird vegetable smoothie.
Really?
Yes.
Vegetarian goblins. That is so novel.
And so this is a film where it's filled with like ghost grandpas, and there's a witch, and there's some bizarre kills like being turned into a shrub or being suffocated by popcorn. It's utterly incoherent with the plot and like what's going on, and why do these trolls or these goblins really want to have to turn all these people into the sludge to eat them. And it's just super complicated and totally incompetently made. But again, it's like Miami Connection, where it's made by people who just feel like they understand the culture that they're trying to make a film to, and they're trying to check all these cliche boxes, but through their bizarre point of view, just don't quite hit the mark, and come up with this really weird movie. But it is a very memorable film, and so it was immortalized in its own documentary called Best Worst Movie. And yeah, it's got a huge cult following, and I highly recommend watching this one because it's one of the weirdest movies you're ever going to see.
I think you're absolutely right to say like it tries to just check the boxes, because I got such a feeling of like Children of the Corn and a lot of like the standard like early Stephen King kind of horror films in rural
Mhm.
America, that just the setting itself being in rural America was scary enough. But then like you add something on top of it, and I even got kind of like a Leprechaun in the Hood feel, you know. I was like, yeah, this might be kind of creepy, scary, but now you tell me about choking on a popcorn and stuff. I'm like, dude, okay, I can watch this. Like at first I was like, I am not gonna watch this. This just looks weird. But now it kind of sounds fun. And I think yeah, you're 5 for 5 with this one because of the fun factor. The fun factor
Yeah.
alone. Because the fun factor makes me think it's not like Leprechaun. It's more
No, it's
like
not.
Leprechaun in the Hood.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
so for that, I was like, okay, all right, Troll 2, I'd give you a try, even though I've never heard of Troll 1 or the first one.
And yeah, you don't need to. It's fine. I wouldn't even recommend watching the first draw.
Oh, now this next one has a name of 2 words that just they call to me. What do you got for number 5?
Yeah, number five is another film that I is very dear to me because it's such a good time at the movies. It's Samurai Cop from 1991. This is another one of those check the box kind of films, um, and it's at the heights of like the ninja, like we were just talking about the ninja height in movies, the Lethal Weapon influence, and just action cinema was at its heights. And so this is a film that's just weirdly put together because it's about cops are trying to stop this like yakuza gang, and so they bring this cop in from San Diego. It's in LA, and he's supposed to be this expert on these gangs, and he's also trained in the art of bushido. But it's just this un-PC, just overly testosterone action film where it's just like gets all the nuance that you would get from a film like Die Hard or Lethal Weapon. But it's got like the white cop, black cop uh, partners, and it's just got these overly muscular bad guys, especially the big one played by Robert Zadar, who is famous for playing Maniac Cop. And it's just a very strange and violent movie where it's clearly made by people who are trying to rip off successful action films, but in a very sleazy exploitation kind of way. But yeah, it's also got some really like badly constructed action scenes, and it's got one of the biggest fuck ups probably ever in a movie is that our main character has started the film with what seems to be his real long locks, and then it seems like maybe they had to go back and reshoot some scenes, and he'd already cut his hair off, and so they get a wig for him that doesn't look anything like his original hair. God, it actually looks like it's fashioned like a woman's curly lustrous wig, and it's
I
just
love that.
it's
I
so
love
bizarre.
it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a hell of a fun time with the movies, and it's just totally absurd '80s schlock.
Dude, I love continuity errors in a movie, and something like that would drive me nuts. But then you'd have to embrace it, right? In order to just
Yeah.
have a good time. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
I mean, you had me at Samurai
Yeah.
Cop. I mean, like just the name,
Yeah.
you had me because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is so 90s. And you're right, absolutely right. Even from the trailer alone, I could see how un-PC this was. Like some of the things in the trailer that were said, I was like, ooh, I was like, you
Yeah.
could not say that anymore. And it's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I think in some ways it's kind of important that we still like go back and watch things like this and listen to the way people used to speak to realize like how far we've come in such a short time. But it also tells us how much further we probably going to want to go in the next 30 years, you know? Like what are we
Mhm.
saying today that like we look back at 30 years ago and like one of the lines was that the main star and I don't know who the character was, but it was the samurai cop guy and the woman, and he was just like, hey, you want to sleep with me? And it was just like looks like it came like out of left field, and it's just like, yeah, the
Yeah.
90s, dude, that was a weird
Yeah.
time, weird
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And
He does.
samurai
Yeah.
cops, oh.
Yes. And for context, he says that in a much more offensive, sleazier way.
Oh really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? Well, you're a samurai
Yeah.
and a cop. All right, take us into number 4. We're really getting in
Yeah.
there. Huh? Oh,
Number
this
four.
next one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I was starting to not laugh at this, but this is the film that's got a huge reputation for being an awful bet movie, and it is. It's Birdemic shock and awe from 2010. Many people probably heard of this film or have at least know of it. It's a movie made by this guy named James Wynn, who is a Hitchcock super fan, and he went out and tried to make his own Hitchcock film, or his own Birds, basically. And it does follow the basic kind of Hitchcock structure, where it's like a couple gets together and it's sort of a romance at first, and they hit it off and they sleep together, and the next morning they wake up and birds have decided to attack all humans on Earth. However,
Dude, I cannot laugh at that.
however, because that's essentially what happens in the Birds, except for the Birds is much more nuanced and has a lot of character development things. But when these birds show up in this film, they're like clip art being dragged across the screen, and
Really?
clearly put in where they have just very primitive moving wings, but they just stay stationary in the frame. And you have these actors who are trying to fight off these these birds with coat hangers. Sometimes the birds dive bomb into the scene and they explode like they're kamikaze airplanes, but they're just birds hitting the ground, full on explosions. But yeah, it's just filled with just abysmal acting, and just completely wooden characters, to where there's no character development and there's no one really for you to care about. And it's but it's a hell of a fun time once the birds show up, because they're just the worst animation you've ever seen in your life. And just trying to imagine these actors who are acting opposite, nothing there in the frame, but just completely off the mark from being suspenseful, thrilling, or entertaining in a way that was supposed to be. But it's entertaining in the way that you're watching a film that is just a disaster.
At first, I saw the movie and I was like, "Oh, birdemic, like pandemic, but with birds." I was like, "All right," I had no idea what this is going to be about. So, like, it starts off, and like you said, it's an early 2000s. It's 2010. It's like a romantic love comedy, kind of looks like it. I'm like, okay, it looks bad, yes, but I mean, it's just some regular old rom-com. And then like birds start dying, and then birds start attacking people, and then it's like zombie birds or something, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then there's like this birdemic heavy metal song playing in the background, and then you see people coming out with the coat hangers, like you said, trying to fight off these horribly animated birds, and I'm like, who the hell made this and why? I was like, who said this movie is going to be a good idea? And I was just like, oh man, I was like, I would watch this, right? So you got me on this one too. I'll tell you, but I was just like, how bad is this going to be? And I have to ask though, what's the run time on this about, in the neighborhood of? What do you think?
Oh, probably 80 to 90 minutes.
Yeah, I figured it could not be anywhere longer than an hour and a half. Couldn't be.
Yeah.
There wasn't that much of a storyline.
No. But also, there is quite a bit of time in the movie, because if you're familiar, have you seen The Birds before?
I have not.
So in The Birds, that film, the Hitchcock film, there is a considerable amount of time before the birds attack, but all that time is spent sort of building up the characters you're going to care about, and sort of seeding the idea that things are getting progressively worse as the birds officially attack. This film, it's just one of the worst romantic films, or attempt at a romantic film, as these two characters get together before the birds attack. But it's like 40 minutes of the movie before the birds attack, and so at least it's how I remember it. It's just a drag to get through.
It looks it. It really looks it. All right, where you coming at for our number 3?
Yeah, number 3 is a kind of an older film, but it's one of the pillars of bad movies, and it was made famous by Mystery Science 3000 for kind of bringing us to the forefront of bad movie culture. It's Nanos, The Hands of Fate from 1966. I'm going to try to describe the plot for you. It's a family gets stranded on a road trip, and they end up at this house that's owned by this guy named the Master. And he is sort of a Dracula / satanic cult leader kind of guy with a harem of women that he has under his power. But I don't really know what he wants. Like, there's not really any drive to the film of what's going on. And he has a manservant named Torgo who is running the house. And Torgo is a bad movie icon because it's just played by this guy who doesn't really know what he's doing. He's either like a half goat man with pillows shoved down his pants around his knees to look like maybe he has goat legs, but he looks like he's on some sort of downer the whole movie, where he's sort of trying to shuffle around and be weird and mysterious, and let them know the things that they're doing in the house the master would not like. And it's just a weird movie. It has no drive to it. It doesn't really have any plot to it, and I think it's trying to be something along the lines of like these sort of satanic movies at the time that kind of predate Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where people would get stranded out in the middle of nowhere and they would find like a cult or Satanists, but people would kind of get knocked off one by one. But this film, it kind of has a structure, but you don't know what the hell is going on for the most. It's just so incoherent. But kind of the lore behind the film is it's this Texas fertilizer salesman who funded the movie and directed it. And he tried to get into this was his attempt to make it in the movie business. As he wanted to switch careers here, and he just I don't know, he did not have any directing skills and just kind of came and made this just awful movie. It's like a real headache of a movie to watch if you're just going to watch it by itself. But it's a fantastic film to watch with a bunch of friends and to laugh at it. Yeah.
I kind of feel like you're saying we should have a beverage while
yes.
while watching this or
Yeah,
something.
yes.
Yeah, I'm not really even sure if I ever seen many movies from the 60s. Like this was made in 66, right? So it's like the dress and the scenery and everything, like definitely gives that kind of vibe. But then it's just this family on a vacation drive in rural America. And again, rural America scares the shit out of me. So I'm like, oh, where is this going? And then like they go to this house and they're like, stay the night. And I'm like, no, don't stay the night. Never stay the night. And then it just goes all kind of weird. And it's like Charles Manson cultish kind of shit. But like, I was like, what is going on? And then to hear you say that you don't really ever find out what's going on. Like I was like, who
Yeah.
is this Manos? Like Manos, the Hands of Fire. I kind of like,
Yeah.
I was like, is this a student film? Like I really thought I was like, this has to be like a
Yeah.
student film in the 1960s, right? Right. But no, it was a Texas fertilizer salesman who made it. Like now it kind of makes sense. And you know what? If I was with you, I would watch it with you, buddy. All right. So I'll give you this one. I would never watch it on my own, though. No way. No way. It's way too weird.
Yeah.
All right. Let me preface this next one for you. Okay. So I do know what this one is, and we've talked about it before, but I still want you to do your whole refresher. But I'm going to tell you, you have to sell me on this hard, man. Like, do I really need to watch this film? All right. So take it away. Introduce it for us.
Yeah, I talked about this one back when we talked about American independent cinema, because I wanted to kind of bring up, there's great movies and there's other people who don't make so great movies, but it's all all independent cinema. So this one is considered the Citizen Kane of bad movies. It's The Room from 2003. So Tommy Wiseau is this guy, mysterious guy. No one knows where he's from. He's clearly not from the States, probably from Europe somewhere. Set out to make a sort of classic Hollywood romance drama in the vein of like Tennessee Williams kind of films, or the films of his idols, which were Marlon Brando and James Dean, kind of these classic Americana dramas. Except for so he has the idea of what the plot is, and he kind of does hit the mark on that, but he doesn't really kind of understand where those kind of characters come from. And Tommy makes himself the lead. Tommy Wiseau is no Marlon Brando. Tommy Wiseau isn't even a Pauly Shore. He is.
Wow, that's a statement.
He has no acting ability whatsoever. He has no charisma with the people he casts in the film. And it's just a film it pulls from Rebel Without a Cause. It even has some like influence on the dialogue. And it's just about a guy who seems, Tommy Wiseau, who plays the main character, his character seems to be the perfect spouse, but his girlfriend is cheating on him with his best friend. And it's the sort of basic love triangle film that is just bizarre. Some of the scenes feel rushed. Tommy is acting as just purely incompetent, and there's scenes that require him to swing for the fences in his performance, and crying scenes and tantrum scenes that he does, and they're just laughably just terrible, but just compelling at the same time, because it's just watching this man scream and cry on camera. Um, but it's just like his passion project, and so it's endearing in some way, even though he made a film that's um, just bizarre, and it's like a bizarre recreation of human behavior. But it was taken. The guy who the second actor in the film wrote a book called The Disaster Artist, and it kind of chronicled how he met Tommy and how they made the movie, and that got turned into a movie starring James Franco and Seth Rogen. And so this is kind of huge culture around this movie now. And it plays midnight screenings where people throw spoons at the screen, they quote the movie, and Tommy's kind of embraced that wacko version of this film where he set out to make this drama, and now it's endeared as this comedy. And so he tours around with the movie, and he'll sign things. There's a lot of scenes of the guys, the dialogue scenes where the guys are just throwing a football around because that's what men do. Even though probably Tommy has no idea, anything else. He probably has no idea what football is about, or like why people throw footballs and stuff in this country. And so he'll sign your football and so forth. And he just loves to be around and experience the people experiencing his film. And so in a weird way, he did achieve his dream of making a movie with lasting impact, albeit in a very different light. And so this is definitely a movie I would not recommend to watch on your own, like isolated. It's definitely a movie you should watch with some friends again, and with some mind altering substances. So, but yes, it's a hell of a good time if you were in that setting.
All right, so I will never watch it by myself. I'm glad you said don't even try. All right,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna give you a half a cell on that one. All right, half a cell, because like I have heard a lot about it and Disaster Artists, and like I am highly aware of it, but I don't feel the need to watch it unless I would be with a group of friends and we're just like, hey, let's watch a bad movie and laugh and talk through the whole thing. Like then I could get behind it. Like I'm watching a movie just to make fun of the movie. I could do that.
Yes.
All right. And to me, that kind of is the quintessential mark of a bad movie, right? You can just watch it to make fun of it. But that being said, this last one, you're number one. I have no idea, my friend. Just take it away with your worst bad movie of all time. Give it to us.
Yeah, this is the daddy of all bad movies. This Plan 9 from Outer Space from 1957, directed by Ed Wood, or Edward D. Wood Jr. This is a film, I'll get into him in a second, but this is a film that is just the heights of cheapo horror sci-fi films out of Hollywood at the time. Without getting too far into it, there was just around this time was the beginning of the birth of American independent cinema, or like small studios, and so they were kind of like funding these little cheapo movies. It's the heyday of the drive-in and the B movie, where they play more than one movie at a time on a bill. And so this is Ed Wood's attempt at making his masterpiece of sci-fi horror about aliens invading the world and resurrecting the dead. And it's an incoherent disaster of a movie that's just fueled by this man who has such a melodramatic passion for the emotions of cinema. And so he loves his characters have this sort of soap opera melodrama to them, where they're all emoting all the time, and he loves the Universal monster films. And so prior to this movie, he hooks up with Bela Lugosi and makes some movies, but Bela Lugosi dies in the middle of making this movie, and so he hires a guy to sort of lurk around as Dracula to kind of piece the movie together. It's got Vampira and a wrestler in this film, I forget his name, but it's just got these kind of like weird iconic B movie staples in them. But it's just a movie also where, why would aliens need to resurrect the dead to invade the earth? And then they also have a flying saucer invasion of the earth, but there's also like psychic kind of like narrating the movie about what's happening, and it's just all these things kind of like mixed together to make this weirdo movie. But the charm of it is
Mm-hmm.
it's super cheap, and there's you can see the strings on the flying saucers, and
Oh, that's adorable.
yes, there's this one scene where there's two people who've been killed, and when the cops are looking at them, they're clearly these like cotton stuffed dummies on the ground instead of hiring actors to play the dead corpses. And yeah, you can see like just really bad sets that look like they were built in a garage, and but that's part of the charm. And like I said earlier, some especially at this period, you had to pay to shoot on film, and so this is a movie that really comes off as someone who couldn't afford to do a second take. And so there's a lot of mistakes the actors make, or like stumble on their lines, or they trip over something, or they knock into something, and there's no second take. And so all these things are just in the
Oh,
film.
wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
and yeah,
incredible.
and so yeah, and so it's a fun time. And it's just also when you're like a lot of these films on this list, when you're watching them, it's just the warped mind of someone. I don't even say warped, but it's the individuality that comes from the person who made them. Maybe they're not a great filmmaker, but you kind of see their personality presented in the film.
You see
And
what they were going
yeah,
for, but you're like,
yeah,
ooh, a swing and a
yeah.
miss.
But not everybody could be Steven Spielberg or Scorsese, right? They're just like, um, but they did it with a lot of passion. And this movie specifically, and the director Ed Wood was immortalized in the movie Ed Wood in the middle of the '90s, that Tim Burton movie, um, in his sort of homage to B movie sci-fi films, and one of the most passionate filmmakers to take a swing at doing them. So, Plan 9, it's got the reputation as the worst, if not one of the worst, if not the worst movie ever made.
Dude, yeah, with it, I mean, 1957, so it's the oldest one on this list. And I had to try and piece it together. I was like, so you have Dracula and zombies and aliens. I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, this is the 1950s. I kind of felt like, was this a director's attempt to see what audiences liked in early movie America cinema? Like, because it was like, hey, do you like aliens? We'll give you some of that. Hey, do you like Dracula? We'll give you some of that. Do you like Vampira? Do you like zombies? Let's try a little bit of everything and see what you like. And I don't know, but now listening to you, like, I think I would enjoy watching it to see just the errors of filmmaking, and the heart that goes into a passion project. But the finances are real. Like, it takes a lot of money in reshooting, especially because we're talking about an actual film. So like, you have to pay for every single inch of film that you have. And so I was like, you know what, this, I could dig it. I think I could watch this one on my own even.
Wow,
All right, my friend. So that puts you at about 9.5 out of 10.
all
So
right,
yeah, you did really good on this
not
list.
bad.
And yeah, but now we got to get into this Q&A we always kind of do. And
Oh yeah.
firstly, like, why this list? Why do you always want to talk about like genre flicks or like great movies or like South Korean cinema or something like that, but not like bad movies? What drew you to this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something people don't talk about in regards of any merit. And so usually when I'm on here, I'm like talking about exploitation films, which plenty of the films I've talked about on this podcast, many people would watch and be like, "That's a piece of garbage."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but
Myself as well.
but I mean, we talk about regional films, we talk about all kinds of different things, but there's this whole other culture of movies, um, but made by people who aren't that great at them. And so, but they're endearing in their own qualities. But one thing that I can't abide in a movie is mediocrity. Like, it's just there's no, you don't remember it after you watch it. It just kind of checks off all the boxes in a way that it doesn't try it's playing everything safe. It doesn't try anything new. It doesn't try to do anything that may offend anyone, and it tries to appease everybody in every member of the audience, no matter their age or background or anything like that. And so you kind of get these films that just feel like you know blah. They're nothing memorable. But a film like this, to me, like, those mediocre films are truly bad movies because they're nothing. They're bland. They're super vanilla. But if you get these weird low budget movies made by people who have such passion, and they didn't quite set the world on fire, but they did make something memorable. To me, that's something to celebrate. And a lot of these films have brought audiences together, bring friends together, and they're more entertaining and have a lot more value to some people than some of these films that many studios put out. So I want to give it a chance to highlight some of them here on the show.
I like that a lot because especially in the days of streaming right now, streaming platforms are churning out so much mediocrity just because they need to expand their library,
Mhm.
right? So we're getting a lot of these just bland, like you said, check in the boxes movies that is like, you look at it and you're like, wow, this just came out in 2023. What is this new flick? I never heard of this. And you're like, never heard of any of the people, never heard of the director, never heard of the studio. It's a brand new movie, and the story is like cut and paste story from 50 other movies that you've seen, and you're like, what is this? Another US Special Forces movie goes saves the day somewhere in another country?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how many of these do we need unless you do something original? And so there's a ton of mediocrity out there, and it drives me up a wall too. I'm like, I have no interest in watching this, but getting together with some friends to celebrate some stuff that's pretty awful and have a good time. I'm totally behind that. Totally. It's kind of like you could cook while doing this, you could play board games while watching these movies. Like you could do all kinds of things while
Mhm.
having something that's comical on the TV. But as always, I like to ask you, 10 films are it's so limiting. Do you have any runners up, two films that you couldn't quite put on the list, but you want to give a little love to?
Ooh, two films. I don't know, but I do
Or
have
one film?
I do have a special film to talk about. That's got a wild story behind it. It's called Polgasari from 1985. This is a North Korean film.
What?
This is Yes, this is a North Korean film.
No
This
way.
is
That's not
Yes,
even possible.
yes. Oh, it is. It is a film that is a Godzilla knockoff. It's the North Korean Godzilla film. Um,
Oh, I want to watch this
yes,
now.
yes, yes, yes. It's Yes, and so the North Koreans did not know how to make movies, um, and so it's a bad movie aimed at the idea is that it's aimed at the outside forces. Rep, you know Pulgasari, the monster, represents outside forces, whether they're America or South Korea, invading North Korea and destroying North Korea. And the North Koreans have to fight back against this monster. Um, the most fascinating thing about this film is that Kim Jong Il
Yeah, Kim Jong Il.
at the time had been amassing a bunch of film prints from around the world. He was a massive film fan. He was collecting. He was basically using his people to steal movies at the North Korean embassies around the world, and he had a private library of movies. And he really wanted to make movies because I think under his father he was like head of propaganda, so he really understood how movies worked and how they affected people from a viewing point of view. But he did not understand how they worked from a filmmaking point of view, like the production of them. And so he actually, in the 80s, kidnapped a famous South Korean filmmaker and a famous South Korean actor or actress.
No
Um,
way.
and yes, this is a whole like big story. I won't get off topic, but he forced them to make films for him for the North Korean um,
Wow, I had
cinema.
never heard this. This is
Yes,
crazy.
yes. There's a great book called the Kim Jong Il Production, and I'll have to get it mailed to you because it is a great read. But it's about this whole situation. And anyways, it all culminates with the making of Polgasari, and he wants to make this film, and the director. From his point of view, the film he was making was about North Korea being terrorized by this monster, and in the director's point of view, this giant monster represents Kim Jong Il, not outside forces coming in and destroying North Korea. And so it's not a great movie because the North Koreans, kind of details in the book is that the North Koreans would build the sets, they'd shoot one scene, they'd tear it down, and they'd build another one, almost like slave labor, as opposed to shooting all the same scenes in the same set in a collected amount of time. And so it was just completely inefficient and just made under the idea that if you didn't make this film, you're going to be murdered. But yeah, this is a wild movie, and it has a lot of political crime behind it, and sort of like just wild stories and things. And um, but yeah, it produces just a little schlocky monster movie.
You know, we thought Hollywood was corrupt. Like that's some crazy shit right there. Whew. Yeah, that's a deep cut. I like it. I like it. That's a good runner up, my friend. A really good one. All right, now I got some more questions for you, and it's a few questions, but really I kind of feel like you can wrap them all up in one. And it's like it's really about the topic that we're talking about, bad movies, like and also horror movies. Like I look at this list, and a good portion of them seem like they are trying to be horror flicks. And from previous discussions we've had on other lists, it seems like a lot of genre or a lot of B movies are the bad movies, or that at least most bad movies are horror movies. Like, you know, you get what I'm saying? It seems like there's a correlation there. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, would you say that they're in the bad movies category? Is that mostly populated by horror films, or are there like many, is there like a wide variety and dense different subject genres within the bad movie category, or is it just mostly horror films?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good way to say that, yeah, most of them probably are horror films, and for a reason is that horror is one of the only, if the only, genre, it may be the only genre that a small budget, small production can, be a hit at the box office. It can really make a lot of money. There's a lot
That's
of
true,
a lot
right?
of a lot of films like that, and so I think a lot of people, um, especially a lot of producers who can get their hands on some money, try this, and they don't all score the touchdown with them. So horror is that genre that persists even today. I mean, you can take something like Ghost Shark and the many different iterations of the shark movie. That's definitely under the horror umbrella. And Plan 9 from Outer Space, you can see all the different horror elements into it, and so those are things that, um, not necessarily a guaranteed thinkability to them at the box office, but they are tried and true things where they know audiences will go see horror films. Um, but there are other trends, I think. The action. I don't know if we're really getting bad action movies these days, although there are quite a few of them, but not in the way that it used to be in the 80s and 90s, where action was something you can go to the Philippines or Mexico and make them a cheap budget, with one muscle bound star. And that was like a thing, that kind of Miami Connection and Samurai Cop kind of come out of, because we had many different small production companies who were doing that at the time, and so there was a market for that sort of stuff. But now it just seems like horror and maybe shark movies, or I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but like, are the main staples of bad movies. If I'm thinking about what's still coming out, what's being dumped on streaming services today. But yeah, horror still seems to be the viable, low budget ticket to success, and unfortunately not all of them turn out to be well made.
That makes complete sense considering, like you said, the budget.
Mhm.
Because horror films you can do, and I mean, I think the best example in our generation, is like Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah.
That came out of nowhere with almost no budget and made handfuls of money, millions and millions of dollars,
Mhm.
with just like handheld cameras and stuff. And that really spurred this new age, I think, revitalization of low budget horror films, where now you have like studios like Blumhouse, which specialize in low budget horror for big turnarounds. And I think you're right. Like that makes complete sense to me, that because you can do a horror film with such a low budget, that just because you're pumping more of them out with such a low budget, it kind of makes sense that you get quite a few bad ones too. um,
Absolutely.
all right, well, now our last question, one we always end with, and I'll say part of this I feel like you've already answered. So maybe focus in on the second part for it, or focus on, you know what, say whatever you want. All right, I'm not going to leave you to answer, but okay, simple as this. Okay, so you have you have these lists, and you love these lists, and the bad movies list. Like, why is this list important to you? But why should other people view this list as important as well?
Ooh, that's a good point, because I can imagine all of these films turning a lot of people off. or just the idea of, I'm gonna sit through a bad movie. Like, that's why would I want to experience a bad movie? But thinking about all the thinking about all the movies you've watched where you left the theater and you're just like, man, that was a real piece of shit. It didn't really do anything for me, and like, it's just, it's another movie that's cookie cutter from the last movie I saw, or the last movie in the franchise was the same thing over and over again. And it's just these films offer some level of excitement. Maybe not all of them. Like Man of Hands of Fate is not an exciting movie, but it is if you get your friends together. And what's the most important thing about cinema is the communal experience and having everyone together and everyone joining in on the joys of it and experiencing it and laughing together. The absurdity of these films is a lot to take in, and it's entertaining. I mean, it's at the bottom, at the end of the day, the bottom line of cinema is that it has to be entertaining. And so there's nothing more entertaining than watching a movie like this. So that's all I'm going to say.
I love it. I think that's a perfect answer. The community of watching it together with friends. I love it. I love it so much. And with that, my friend, before we head out for the day, why don't you tell us what you've been working on lately at HipsvilleAD? What you got going on?
Yeah, I'm going to be dropping a post here at the end of May. It's going to be celebrating the 100th birthday of the director Saigen Suzuki. He was a filmmaker from Japan who was a sort of a journeyman director, worked for a studio, but he really hated his job as being a sort of a assignment director on making these like Yakuza films. And so he just started making these films more and more outlandish, and he kind of changed how artful genre films can be and how weird and different they can be. And he also pushed the levels of sex and violence on screen. And he was so outlandish he got fired from his job. And so it's his 100th birthday is coming up, and he's no longer with us. I mean, I think he died just not only a few years ago, in his 90s. And so he is one of the greatest artists to ever work in sort of genre and exploitation cinema. And I'm going to be spotlighting that coming up soon.
Excellent stuff. That sounds super, super interesting to me. And where can the good people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can go to badday.substack.com. It's where I post all my blog posts. And then you can find me on HipsvilleAD on Instagram.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on, my friend. And that's HipsvilleAD's top 10 list. Definitely check them out everywhere on the interwebs. And always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Talk to you soon, Lofi listeners. Pickering and Day, signing off.
Catch you on the flip side.